Hi there, fellow adventure seekers. We're going to be talking to you today about our 1,000 Trails journey?
Experience?
Marathon? Dilemma? I don't know.
Dilemma.
So, we've kind of teased this on some of our live streams for months, and we're going to go ahead and tell you now our 1,000 Trails experience. And it started a little over a year ago, actually, while we were still living in a sticks and bricks, and we just started our YouTube channel. We purchased the camping pass, the annual camping pass with one zone, the southeast zone, and I don't remember the price. Doesn't matter, the price is higher now anyway. And we had great experience and luck getting reservations in Florida literally at the last minute. We bought that camping pass in January of 2020, and we booked reservations in South Carolina for our drive to Tampa, and also in Florida. And we spent a little over 2 weeks in 1,000 Trails properties in Florida, which is all we had planned to. So it worked out really good for us there, and then COVID hit.
Right.
As far as our 1,000 Trails experience goes, and so everything was put on hold. We weren't in a 1,000 Trails property when COVID hit. I know that everybody, well, almost everybody we know that was in a 1,000 Trails property when COVID hit stayed and stayed.
They just weren't able to like jump park to
Yeah,
park
they were.
normally
Yeah, they
did.
didn't kick anybody out of any of the parks. So those who were in the parks got to stay. So I know a lot of people spent 3 months or more in the same 1,000 Trails park, which was great from a cost perspective for them because they didn't have to pay any money, didn't have to move. But it probably got a little, stir crazy. Yeah.
For those of us gypsies who like to move around a little bit.
So in June, or late June of last year, we went ahead and bought a resold or used Elite Basic membership. We bought it from Campground Membership Outlet. And Kimberly at Campground Membership Outlet was great. She explained everything to us, answered all of our questions, and helped us get into the package we purchased. Unfortunately, once Kimberly did all the paperwork and submitted it to 1,000 Trails, it was everything else that happens after that is out of her hands.
So it is not her.
Yeah.
Or her
Yeah.
business.
And I will say, well, I will preface what I'm getting ready to say was, we did talk to her a few times, and she, during the process we're going to talk to you about, and she did give us some advice and pointers and tried to help us get the issues we had fixed. So it wasn't like she just submitted the paperwork and then forgot who we were. No, she was still working with us, and we're really thankful for her. And if you would like to get a membership to 1,000 Trails from Campground Membership Outlet, we highly recommend. Give Kimberly a call and tell her that our EPICRV adventure sent you. So one thing we didn't mention was, why did we buy a camping pass? Well, we were not planning on going full-time whatsoever at the time. We bought it.
Right.
And so we
It makes much more sense for somebody who's not full-time. Part-timers.
Right.
Weekenders.
And it was like $700 or $800. We'll give it a shot for a year. And, well, hi, Talon. And so that's why we did it basically as a trial run. Now our paperwork is at the mercy of 1,000 Trails. Now keep in mind, oddly enough, despite COVID, RV sales have been booming all summer, spring and summer long, and even still today. So at the same time, the 1,000 Trails memberships and transfers have been booming too. And at the time we purchased, there were only 2 people in 1,000 Trails that did membership transfers. Two.
And I will just say this, by the time that we were making our purchase, even though COVID was still out there, it was not playing into totally like people were still, they're moving park to park, things were a little bit back to normal with that.
Right.
It wasn't where they were stationary anymore.
Yep.
However, in the office part of it, COVID was still an issue because they were working from home, which made those transfers harder because of the system that they have to use.
Right, exactly. So we gave them a few weeks and we called. Your paperwork should be done next week. Okay, wait a week or two. We called. Your paperwork should be done next week. So here's the thing too, I'll go back to, there's 2 people working in transfers. Technically there's really only 1, because once one of those 2 people pick up and start working your paperwork, the other person can't do anything with it.
Yep.
It's like in a closed system. So once that one person takes over, that's the only person you can talk to. So that person goes on vacation or dies or whatever,
well,
you're
if
out of luck.
Die, they're going to be transferred to somebody else.
Yeah, but you're going to have to wait for that too. So
if they take a sick day, go to the doctor or something, you got to wait for them to come back to deal with it.
Luckily, all of this is done electronically. There's no mailing stuff to you to sign, to mail back. I mean, this isn't 1975. So it's all done online. But the problem is, a lot of folks, oddly enough, the sellers of these memberships really don't seem to be too keen on actually selling it. Now, they don't get paid. The seller doesn't get paid until the membership transfer is complete. Now, we paid with Campground Membership Outlet, we paid right up front, right off the bat. And that money's held in escrow basically until the sale is final on 1,000 Trails Inn, and then that seller gets the money. So you would think there'd be some motivation from the seller side to help this process along, but in our case and the case of at least one other person we know, the sellers really seem to be oblivious to the whole thing of what was going on.
I would challenge that a little bit in saying that the sellers are probably older.
Yep.
And since everything's electronic and things went by email and then they didn't check emails and and things got lost in the shuffle. But I do know that at least in one case the seller was like, well, hey, wait a minute, we didn't even get this stuff. Like they were really wanting to move forward, but it just was
So what happened in
challenges.
our case, once we finally got through the every other week call of trying to find out where our paperwork was and being told it was going to be sent out next week, about 6 or 8 weeks later, roughly, I don't remember the whole timeline, we got notification that yes, the paperwork got sent out. Now what that means was we got an email from DocuSign to sign the papers, and we signed it, and then as soon as we signed it, that automatically generates the email to the seller for them to sign their part. And that's where bump in the road hit.
I think it was about 10 weeks.
It was in their spam. And in another case we know of, the seller thought it was spam and just deleted it.
Yes.
So it could have gone either way. And you don't know who the sellers are.
No.
Well, you do know once you get the paperwork to sign because you see their name on them, but you don't have any contact information from them,
right.
So you can't personally reach out to the seller. And I know what some friends of ours had to do was they got Kimberly got involved and helped get 1,000 Trails to actually reach out to them. And of course, Kimberly reached out to the sellers as well and said, "Hey, did you get an email?"
For us as well.
Yeah, and for us as well. And they checked their spam. Oh, what do you know? There it is. But again, you would think that people would be, we paid over $4,000 for our resold membership. Now, I'll just go ahead and say that because it's not a national secret or anything like that. If you call Kimberly up, she's going to send you a list of available memberships at available levels, and if they have any elite basics, they're going to be in the $4,000 range most likely. So that's how much we paid. And you would think somebody would be wanting that money, but they don't. They just don't. So
be rid of the yearly annual dues you have to pay.
Right. So once you do get all that done, and hopefully if you buy a membership now, because they've hired more people, maybe things are a lot less crazy now. More people are more used to working remotely, and all that stuff's been figured out. So the process doesn't take 10 weeks or whatever for you. Once you do get everything done, even if you're a camping pass member like we were, our membership didn't actually end until this past January. So what happened with that was we basically just lost our camping pass, which was fine, and because they gave us a new membership number, and we just started using that, and the rest is, so they say, history.
It took about 16 weeks, 17 weeks.
But you still have to add the trails collection if you want that. If you want RPI, well, we're gonna have to do another video on updating you on RPI.
Right.
And the reason about the RPI is because that's another add-on where you pay like $10 a night at some other parks. But Thousand Trails has to send a notice to RPI, and then RPI has to call you. We've already requested 2 different times to get RPI, and one time was in September, and the other time was about 2 weeks ago, and we're still waiting on RPI to call. So that's going to take a while too. So just keep those things in mind. But I'll tell you, it's honestly worth it. I mean, a lot of people say, well, going through all that hassle, would you do it again? I said, absolutely, because those memberships are, double or triple what we paid. So we just had to wait. That's all. The only hassle we had was waiting. So despite being homebound, so to speak, for a few months because of COVID, we were able to use, in the past 12 months, we were able to use our Thousand Trails membership, whether it be the camping pass or our new Elite Basic membership, 70 times. So
it was worth it for us then.
It's worth it. Is the big membership worth it to somebody who doesn't full-time? Maybe. It depends on how much you RV. And this is the same with any campground type memberships, camping membership, Passport America, whatever. I see this question all the time on Facebook. Is Passport America worth it? Is Thousand Trails worth it? Well, they're only worth it if you use it. Most of the negative comments I see about these places are, well, I bought it, but there's none in my area, so I can't use it. Like, then why did you buy it? I mean, so buy the memberships that make sense to you for your way of camping, your frequency of camping, and where you camp. Now, if you're in the Midwest, there are no Thousand Trails. So don't buy a Thousand Trails membership if all you do is camp in the Midwest. Because you're just basically giving your money to Thousand Trails and you'll never use them. So we highly recommend you do get a Thousand Trails if you're full-time, because it'll save you a lot of money. Like I said, we only stayed in it 70 nights in the past year. Looking forward to using it a lot more in the future. With the nice thing about the Elite Basic membership over the camping pass, the two biggest things is you can stay 3 weeks in a Thousand Trail property versus 2, and you can make the reservations 120 days out instead of 60 days out. So those are the 2 big differences between the 2. And honestly, for a full-timer, it's worth it to pay that extra money for that extra amount of time, especially if you're going to be staying in the Thousand Trails properties frequently. Like, we know a lot of people that are just hopping around Orlando, the 4 or 5 or whatever number of Thousand Trails and collection properties there. And they just bounce around, and it doesn't cost them a dime but the gas money to do it.
Yeah, they bounce around in Florida as a whole. And
yeah, some bounce around in Florida as a whole. And if that's what you want to do, then you definitely need a Thousand Trails for sure.
Now, I know one of the things that we get asked a lot is, are Thousand Trails nice? I mean, do you think they're like, really great parks and that? And I would say it's it can be a toss-up. There are some that were a little bit challenging. We have had one that we actually kind of almost, it was a sight, but it felt like we were parking on somebody's grass in between 2 people's yards.
We were on somebody's lawn, and let me tell you, they weren't happy we were on their lawn, and they let us know it. And you're going to run into that because all these parks have full-time people that live there full-time.
Right.
And they've lived there for forever, and they're in their 70s and 80s now, and they honestly do not like the temporary or transient people coming through like us. And that's why I said they're just the old guy that's like, stay off my lawn.
Right.
But that's been one campground out of, I don't know, 10 maybe we stayed at.
Right.
And the last one we stayed at, Cloverleaf in Brooksville, it was the total exact opposite from the full-time folks there.
They came out and helped you move in.
Yeah, they were helping us move in.
Like the poles come out.
Yeah, they were trying to give talent treats. I mean, they were just super, super nice. So it's just like any other campground. You're going to have, good neighbors, you're going to have bad neighbors. But the nice thing is, they're not going to be permanent neighbors because you're moving on in a few weeks.
Right. I would say most of the sites are okay. Now, some of them, I mean, if you want to park always on concrete and have this perfect level pad, you're not going to find that. A lot of them are actually dirt areas, hard packed dirt areas. Yep. You know, you can get some that are, they're not paved, I would say asphalt maybe, or gravel is what I'm trying to think of. Mm-hmm. But, you know, even them, they're not always level, just like anywhere else. And sometimes they're a little bit tight of getting in and, you know, making sure you have, I mean, we actually, our neighbors at that same park, even though they were really nice and pleasant, they would come out and have their conversation, and it literally was underneath our window. So we heard everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, you take those, you know, pros and cons. Was it worth it? We weren't there that long, and we didn't pay for it.
And
so
you had
we
to
were
put it
able
in
to be there.
context, too.
Exactly.
How much are you paying for that park?
Right.
Now, if you're paying, you know, $100 a night, and you're on a mud pit pad with noisy neighbors, okay,
Right.
I'd be really mad. If you're paying a nada a night, and you're in a mud pit pad with noisy neighbors, still not happy, but not as bad.
They had an indoor pool, and they had, you know, other amenities, you know, horseshoes and tennis and things like that. So, I mean, there were other amenities, shuffleboard, I guess, too, probably, you know, that, you know, if you're using those too, it makes up for it.
And to put in the context of, you know, how much it costs per night, okay, we had the camping pass. And I think, like I said, I think it was around $700 we paid for the camping pass with the one zone. And we used it for 70 nights. Well, that's actually pretty easy math. We averaged $10 a night. And we would have, and if it hadn't been for COVID, we would have used it a lot more. So $10 a night is probably, I would say, almost twice as much as what our average would have been if we'd have been able to, you know, travel as we had planned. We had a bunch of Thousand Trails properties planned in March and April that all got canceled. So
March through September, we didn't use it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we still paid $10 a night. And I would say every place we stayed, including the place with the grumpy old men, I mean, that was worth more than $10 a night.
Yeah, there's a lot of amenities at that one too. It was a little challenging to get into the spot, but you're going to find that whether you're in a private campground or whether you're in Thousand Trails, you're going to, which is private as well, but you know, you're going to find that in any campground.
Yeah.
There's just going to be ones that sometimes you get a site that's going to be challenging to get into, and you make the best of it.
Here's a couple of little hints. Practice backing up. Find an empty parking lot somewhere, whether you be in a fifth wheel, travel trailer, Class A, B, C, C+, A-, whatever. Get out in that parking lot with some cones and practice backing up. Practice maneuvering around stuff. Because all these parks, somebody's been in them with a big rig. There's been a 40-some foot tag axle, most likely where you're trying to put your 25, 30-foot trailer. They got in there and they got out with no problem. So, you know, you can too.
But I would say know your rig and know your abilities. If you don't have the ability to do it and you don't, you know, you're not sure about it, you know, try to give it a shot. But if you can't do it, know you got to go. And
take your time. Mm-hmm. And if you're blocking traffic because you're trying to get backed in, you're blocking traffic. Don't worry about it. Seriously, we've had friends in that situation, and I looked right at them and I said, they can wait.
Yep. They
can enjoy the show or they can be mad. Let's just get you backed up, and that's all that matters. I mean, don't worry about what anybody else is doing or saying or thinking of your backing skills. Just do the best you can. If you got to get out of the driver's seat, go back and look and scope things out and get back in the driver's seat, then do it.
This is where it doesn't matter. If you are uncomfortable and you are not okay with doing it, find another park. Even if you have to pay that really ridiculous price for one night, because that will at least get you through the hump, and then you can find somewhere else to go. And that ridiculous price, it's well worth it so you don't have damage.
Yeah, because if you think you're embarrassed by blocking traffic, backing somebody in, just think of the level of embarrassment that you would have, and also the hurt on the pocketbook if you tried to back in too quickly or outside of your skill level, and you did damage to not only potentially your RV but also somebody else's too. So take your time, And if it doesn't feel right, go somewhere else.
So all in all, we think Thousand Trails is awesome because it is a no-brainer for us being full-time.
They need one in Gulfport.
Yes, being able to go, you know, from the different parks without, you know, paying every night. And they have amenities that are good for us. We don't always use the amenities, but we like to know that they're there. And we like them. I mean, they're going to be just as good as other parks that are out there, so.
Yeah. Now, we haven't done a campground review in all of the Thousand Trails parks we've stayed in, but we've done reviews on most of them. And there's a link to the playlist below that has all of our Thousand Trails reviews on it. If you've had any experience with campground membership or just buying a membership outright for Thousand Trails, we'd love to hear your experience, and apparently so would the seagulls behind me. So leave us a note in the comments below and let us know what your experience was with either campground membership outlet or with Thousand Trails. Or I know a lot of people though just you can buy Thousand Trails. I'll buy them like on Facebook Marketplace because people put them up for sale. So if you bought or resold, we'd love to know how you bought it and how your experience was and how much you like Thousand Trails now. Now remember, if you bought it and you don't use it, then you can't complain about it because you haven't used it, so you don't know if it's any good or not. So as always, friends, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate all of your support, and we look forward to reading your comments about Thousand Trails and Campground Membership Outlet.
And make your next journey an epic adventure.
Bye.
See ya.